Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast called Ken Reads, where I can read out your letter that you've shared with me in the hopes that I can better help you understand what the F just happened between you and the last partner you were dating, whether it was in a relationship or a situationship. I look at these experiences from the lens of attachment theory. I don't just come up with thought terminating cliches like, they're just not that into you, or if they wanted to, they would. While some of those phrases might have their benefit in other dynamics, I try and look at this from the lens of, is there perhaps an insecure attachment issue that's at play in these particular dynamics? And though I am an Australian counsellor, I am not someone who is going to be responding to these letters as if I was with a client. I'm here to provide validation, yes, but I can't provide any diagnoses on these. So even if, a lot of people might understandably hear this and be like, well, that sounds like a narcissist. At best, I'll probably say, sounds a bit narky. I probably won't go any further than that out of respect to my ethical boundaries in regards to what I can and can't do. If you find this of benefit to you, fantastic. That's what I want. And if you want to submit your letter, you're very welcome to once there is obviously availability per month. And I'll happily read out and share my own 2 cents as to what I think has gone on in your dating experience to offer you a sense of validation for what you've been through and also to give other people listening a chance to feel like maybe this relates to what they've also experienced as part of collective healing. So, with that all out of the way, let's dive in to the latest letter. Our 100th letter comes from Tina. Truth be told, I was going to attempt to do a episode talking about my own experiences with dating one particular avoidant attacher, and I thought, nah, that's not going to be something that I publicly air. So I'm going to stick to listening to everyone else tell me about their story and commenting for the benefit of validation and collective healing. So let's get into what Tina had to say. And I'm excited. I cannot believe that just to think about it. This podcast started about a year ago and we're already on 100 episodes. So if you think about that, I don't think this includes the bonus episodes. It would include the pilot episodes. That's 100 people who've submitted these cases. And I reckon the fact that, the team and I have seen hundreds of clients and there is just a big following across my socials just goes to show this is a big, big pandemic where this podcast has done such a fabulous job of illustrating the broad spectrum of those who have an avoidant attachment style. For better and for discard worse. All right, Tina, what have you got for us? Let's do this. No pressure. Like, no pressure at all. I hope your letter's 100th worthy. No, I'm joking. I'm sure it'll be fantastic. Let's get into it. Hi, Ken. Thank you for your work and for reading my letter. You're welcome. I had never heard of attachment styles before, and I'm grateful to have found you and the guidance you provide as it's helped me navigate the confusion I'm feeling after a painful situationship. My mother language is not English, so I apologize in advance for any mistakes. Totally fine. I will say thus far, most of you who are non-native speakers have done a pretty damn good job of writing your letters. Sometimes I've had to, fill in the gaps here and there and be like, what's being said? But, so far so good. So let's get into it. I'm a good-looking woman and I know that I'm attractive and people pay attention to me. I appear confident, look much younger than I am. I'm tall and have a beautiful body. I'm also very open-minded and communicative. You sound like you got great self-esteem. I'm in my 40s, divorcing after years of emotional neglect in my marriage. For the last 2 years, I found refuge at our weekend house by the seaside, which is 4 hours away in another country. That's where I met him. At first, we just flirted, and he'd always be on the beach with friends, smoking weed. That didn't bother me because I also come from that kind of background. Wow, I'm actually really interested to know more about your background, if I'm completely honest. Like, the fact that you've had emotional neglect in your marriage makes me wonder, I wonder what the attachment style of your previous partner was. Secondly, it's interesting that this guy who smoked weed is something that doesn't bother you. I don't mean it's a bad thing that people do drugs. That doesn't really, I mean, on one hand, it kind of does raise alarm bells for me at my age. I'm not here to judge anyone who does drugs. That's not the point. It's more just to say, I always get curious about why people do that. Because if it's recreational, I mean, that's one thing. But it's always very interesting where like people need that for emotional reasons. So yeah, there's that. Anyways, after a year of just noticing each other, I saw that he started lingering on the beach, often alone, watching me. I thought he was too shy to approach me, so eventually I made the first move. Very good observation. Hmm. I have a thing to say about that, which is I think some avoidance can be very good at approaching people too, but I think it comes from a very people-pleasing part of them wanting to be a bit of a performer and wanting to show off. So there is that. But I think it's all coming from anxiety and disassociation. I know some people say it's fake. I beg to differ. A lot of it's just a very exaggerated part of who they are. We talked for an hour, exchanged numbers, and met that evening. Oh gosh. He talked a lot, was high. He was high. He was open, told me he'd never had a serious relationship before. He said he was a big romantic, but he was feeling stuck and unhappy and felt numb. Ugh. Sounds like depression. And it sounds like this guy might be a fearful avoidant. He had no job, no routine besides nightly sport, and he slept till noon. Oh, this is a story we've heard before from people about the narcoleptic avoidant attachers. Yeah, this is sounding like it's combining a lot of the stuff we've heard before. He also mentioned that he wouldn't say I love you unless he really meant it. I saw red flags but dismissed them. Yeah, these are they're subtle, but they're red flags. Absolute red flags for sure. He said he knew I was married, but I didn't tell him I was getting divorced, just that my marriage wasn't going well. He was understanding. We kissed that night very passionately, but I stopped it from going further. He seemed rejected. Oh yeah, he's definitely a fearful avoidant. The next day I texted him. He came to see me and immediately kissed me. He asked me questions like he wanted to know me. He himself wasn't as talkative as the night before, and he seemed nervous, possibly fear of someone seeing us. He seemed very delicate and liked being held. Oh, yes. I find a lot of avoidant attachers, particularly the guys. Actually, to be fair, the women and the non-binary people too. But like in my experience, because I date men, like I know what Tina means when she refers to this person as having, you know, a dimension of delicacy to them and they like being held. You can really feel their mother wounding there and how they've had so much neglect that there's a real tenderness to them, which is why I think when we connect with avoidance at that raw level, we really feel like we're connecting with a very vulnerable part of them. I told him he'd be gone for 6 months, and he told me he can send me some pictures of sunsets, and that he said he would later. Later that evening, I texted him something cute, and he replied with a kiss emoji. Oh, we're escalating. After a week, I texted him saying I couldn't stop thinking about him and look forward to seeing him again. He never replied. I've done that. I've had that exact thing happen to me too. It's not fun. I realized you've been ghosted far out. I cried, felt ashamed, and used. Yeah, well, to be fair, I think that's a very reasonable response. And I'm sorry you've gone through that, Tina. You know, he does seem like a very sensitive and fragile guy who probably freaked out and thought, oh my God, I'm not good enough for her. So there is that. Months later, back at the beach, we met again. He apologized for not replying, said he was overwhelmed with and bad with words. I bet he was overwhelmed. But the bad with words, alexithymia is probably what I'm thinking is going to happen there. Plus, I also think too, there's a fear of conflict and also upsetting people. I'm sure that will be a pattern and we'll see that play out again. I told him it was okay and that I understood. He asked if I was still married, then suddenly kissed me. We met again oh. I suspect that was probably part of the self-sabotage. He probably freaked out that you weren't going to be with him. Just a hunch. We met again that night. He panicked when I was a few minutes late. Gosh, he's very sensitive. He's got big fears of abandonment. I confronted him about his hot and cold behavior, and he said he really liked me but couldn't be with a married woman with kids. There you go. There you go. That's the rationalization right there. I thought that was going to be that, but it's bullshit. That hurt. I should have asked him, but it was I should have asked. Oh yeah, sorry. Tina writes, but I should have asked him, so it was okay to fuck me then. Yeah, fair enough. I think that from what I'm reading with regards to this guy, he's definitely a bit of a user of people. I became vulnerable, shared my past, how I grew up like he did, and how I've tried to change. I told him about losing two close people to me recently and how I still try to look forward to the future. He said he wished he'd done the same 20 years ago and shared about his dog passing away and he suddenly became quite emotional. Sounds like he hasn't processed that yet. The kissing didn't feel like it did before. His behavior was unpredictable one moment, where it was hot, the next it was cold. He criticized my looks, called me too well dressed, mentioned another woman chasing him. That's just self-sabotage bullshit right there, and it's flaw finding. He is definitely a fearful avoidant. When I asked a simple question, he snapped. Yet he also made dreamy promises about summer swims on a nearby island. My God, this guy's a romantic. He's a big dreamer. There's arrested development here for days, fear of abandonment, fear of intimacy, everything. What a great episode we've got so far. The next day, he acted cold. Later, he came back and told me he'd thought all night and decided we wouldn't work out. Let me guess, because you're married? This man is just coming up with all the reasons as to why this isn't going to work out because he's so scared of growing intimacy. Mein Gott, this man. Anyways, he also mentioned that he really likes me, but had personal issues, that he must work on himself first. I know a lot of you have heard avoidance say the whole, I need to work on myself. They will not work on themselves. It's such a placeholder line. What they're really saying is, I know I have problems, and that's why, and it's these problems that you're not going to like about me, which is why we're going to end this. I'm going to end this now for both of us. It's almost like they use their personal flaws as a good reason as to why you shouldn't be together. And it's like, no, go work on yourself then. Like, actually commit to therapy. Don't use your shadows and bad parts of yourself, your shame, as an excuse as to why you can't be in a relationship, or certainly as to why you're misleading people who you like. That's just not okay behavior. This is self-sabotage at its finest. He also mentioned that he must work on himself, and he added, please don't cry. I'm not worth it. God, the low self-esteem. I asked why he couldn't just enjoy time with me, and he added, there aren't any butterflies anymore. He offered friendship, said he isn't closing the door, and that we'll see what happens in the summer. I was too stunned to respond. He sat on the beach for an hour alone, staring at me, then left. Ugh, yuck. Back home, I researched him. I found out that he'd, whoa, whoa, I found out that he'd been in prison 10 years ago for weed dealing. His older brother had also been imprisoned multiple times. His whole family, except his sister, lived together. He never mentioned his mum, just his dad briefly, and has a strong bond with his brothers. I realized I needed to stay away. Yeah, good call. I'm not going to say anything to that because to me, I think the weed dealing probably speaks to disassociation for him. I think he's obviously suffered a lot of pain. The profile I get of this guy is he's probably gone through a lot of trauma and weed is his coping mechanism and he's a massive addict. That summer, we had brief interactions. He began showing up around my home, sitting nearby, watching me. He began appearing everywhere. I tried to stay unbothered and avoided him. I noticed that he smokes even more, and I was curious if that's because he's nervous that I'm there. Probably, but I think there's also other stuff too. I felt like he wanted to come closer, but was struggling. In October, he approached me with casual small talk, wanted to know how long I'm staying, but said he couldn't promise me anything because he was always quote unquote busy. But I knew his routine never changed. He was always at the same beach, the same meals, yeah, the same evening hobby. Yeah, this is very avoidant sort of stuff. A lot of them try and have very scripted routines because it helps them maintain control and avoid feeling their feelings. He didn't seem happy when I told him that I was leaving. In November, I texted him to talk. He was out with his friends, sent heart melting emojis. Heart melting emojis? Is that a thing? Is there a heart that actually melts for an emoji? Or was it like heart warming emojis? Either way, great phrase. I've never heard of heart melting before. I know you're not a native English speaker, but I really like that phrase, heart melting. Gosh, add that to the lexicon. And he promised to meet me next time. The next day, he apologized. I told him I wasn't married anymore and I liked our flirting, but only if it had a future. Good on you, Tina, for saying that. He said that he's confused, didn't know what he wants, and he needs to quit smoking weed, but hadn't tried. Oh, great. He said he has a woman waiting, but he wasn't ready for a relationship and is afraid to hurt me. He said he didn't understand why I liked him. I said I really wanted to get to know him, and he replied he didn't want me to see the real him with all the mental issues that he has. He said something like his head is about to explode. I thanked him for being sincere with me. Okay, so that paragraph tells us a lot. It says that he has huge shame wounds. He's very scared to let anyone in. He's afraid of rejection if people get too close to him. And he's trying to push you away with the whole, but I'm a bad person. But you know, the sad irony is probably just like the last letter that I read out, which was fabulous. He's probably very scared of rejection. And I also imagine he doesn't want, so even though he's saying all this stuff, I don't think he wants you to leave him. I think he wants you to come in and rescue and save him. What the sad irony is for a lot of these people is deep down, they want someone to rescue and support them, but often they play these games, the fearfuls in particular, where they'll test you and test you. Now, I want to be very clear. Some of you may be hearing that thinking, well, how do I play the game and get them to be with me? You don't. This is their trauma behavior running the show. And you can't do anything when they're behaving in this way because their mind is like a ping pong ball that goes from one end of the spectrum to the next. And because of that inner turbulence, they can't form a bond in a foundational way. So they're letting their fears run the show. So don't take that to mean that they can't bond with people entirely or that recovery is off the table. It's not. It's just to say that he deep down absolutely does want connection and he likely does want you. Although I feel sorry for the other woman. It sounds like she's probably in a very similar position to you, to be honest, Tina. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of both things going on. He's playing the field. Excuse me. Anyways, he held my hand when I encouraged him, and he loved to be held by me. Yes, see, he wants this, but he's trying to push it away at the same time because he's scared of rejection. We kissed deeply and effortlessly. The chemistry was incredible. We almost had sex, but he has an erectile dysfunction. One day I've got to talk about that because the number of, male avoidant attachers who have erectile dysfunctions is staggeringly high. I reassured him and he said he needed a drink to calm down. He was obviously very scared of intimacy with you because he thought that, he was probably disassociating, worrying that you're not going to like him. I almost wonder if he's actually had a history of, some violence done against him because it does sound like he has a lot of, you know, actually, this is an important point to talk about. Okay, trigger warning. I'm about to talk about something that I haven't really talked about much, and it involves sexual assault. So if you want to opt out of this letter reading now, please do, because this is a very triggering subject, but it's worth talking about. One of the core wounds of people who've suffered assault is I am a bad person. I am bad. No one and there's many other associated sort of thoughts and feelings that go with it too, but it's like shame on steroids. I'd argue it's the worst thing that can possibly happen to a person in the context of trauma. I mean, there might be some people who beg to differ, and you're allowed to share that with me, but I think sexual assault at a young age violates people in such a horrific way that it does so much to their self-esteem, their self-worth, their autonomy, their feelings of safety. And sometimes I can suss out when someone is actually a survivor of assault because they'll say phrases like, I'm a monster, I'm bad. And they might also disassociate and freeze during sex. Other times, they might also engage in reenactment. So, engage in behavior that was like what they experienced, or be heavily into kink and other things like that too. I want to make it very clear that not everyone who engages in kink is a survivor of assault. But there's just something about his presentation, particularly like the weed use, that seems consistent with people who've also experienced assault. So it makes me think, I wonder if this guy is an assault survivor.
And the fact that he's quite close to his brothers, I wonder if they've also gone through some pretty nasty stuff too. Just a hunch. Otherwise, perhaps they've all experienced some pretty awful stuff together too. Anyways, I do kind of feel sorry for him in a way. He said he couldn't stop the overthinking, and this time his best friend saw us and mentioned he was okay with it. Then there was 6 months of no contact. Far out. When we met next, he was excited, told me how he recognized me from his friend's description, and later I messaged saying, I wish we talked more. He replied kindly, then said the message made him sad, but he never said why. We had a beautiful conversation that day. He was more relaxed than ever. We laughed a lot, something which he never does with his friends. My friend said we looked like a couple in love. Yeah, because you are a couple in love. He complimented me, called me beautiful and smart, and said, Woman, you don't know what you are doing to me. And he said that with dreamy eyes and said he felt like a fool. That's very cute. But I also imagine those dreamy eyes are quite glassy and disassociated as well, too. I asked him if he knows that we're dragging our situationship out for Jesus for almost 2 years, and if his friends asked him about it, what was he going to say to them? I reminded him that I already told him I want more, and he said he had quote unquote Peter Pan syndrome and didn't want to grow up. Yes, he does. That's very true. And he couldn't promise loyalty because he liked women and fell easily. This was contradictory. He told me he'd only been in love twice, and I told him if that's his life, go and enjoy it without me. He admitted he wasn't happy and mentioned he should get some professional help for his mental issues. He said he didn't want to feel pressured. Yeah, this is very classic stuff. We kissed softly, not passionately. He never kissed again like the first night, but over time, he'd gotten gentler with me. I remember wondering if he still found me attractive or was hiding his affection because of his previous erectile dysfunction. I reminded him of his many unfulfilled suggestions that we go out. He replied, We'll see. Later that evening, I approached him, which I'd never done before. I smiled at someone else in passing. His face froze. Oh, he feared rejection and also betrayal in that moment. He clearly shut down hardcore. He's very sensitive and he doesn't know how to handle his emotions. I get it that it can be very triggering to see someone eyeing someone else when you like them, but clearly that triggered the shit out of him. He tried to joke it off, but I felt and saw the shift. Yeah, I bet you did. I bet he freaked out and probably backed away from me for a bit. I'm also hypervigilant, and I think he is too. I grew up with an alcoholic father, and I've always scanned him for mood shifts. I was in such a shock that I ran away. If you grew up with an alcoholic father and you also recognized in the beginning that he's also a weed user and you felt comfortable with that, there are two things I want to say. I think he's probably come from a very similar background to you, where there's been a lot of abuse. And I wouldn't be surprised if your attachment style is also fearful avoidant, on the basis that many survivors of alcoholics are usually with a disorganized or a fearful avoidant attachment style. So, Tina, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it's quite common. If not, like attachment issues go hand in hand, often with survivors of addicts. So just putting that out there. But I will say that there is something about your familiarity with addiction that makes me think you're like I think both of you are both trauma bonding and also have had quite similar history as well too. Later, I messaged saying I'd gone home. He replied hours later coldly and said, "Good, you didn't wait for me then." And he added, "We'll see each other next time," with his usual kiss emoji. I think that's people pleasing and he's covering up his sense of rejection. I think he freaked the fuck out and was really upset that he saw you eyeing someone else. Triggered by his coldness, I replied, I'm sorry, but there'll be no next time with a kiss emoji. Though I was triggered, I wanted to remain gentle but firm. I'm curious to see what happens there. I wonder if he actually, it's good that you've said that, but I almost wonder if that activates his abandonment wound and he circles back around. And I meant what I said. I'm done. The highs are so high, but the lows are unbearable. Good on you. Seriously, good on you. Now I'm heartbroken. I've got PTSD from this experience. I fell for him. I felt the connection. I was kind, patient, understanding. I was caring and loving. And I believe he felt that from me as well. Maybe all he wanted was validation. Maybe I gave him that. And maybe that's okay. I can't even be angry with him, but I'm left with pain and so many questions. My friends just say he's a fuckboy. Oh no, he's not. He's absolutely not. and just not that into me. No, he's into you. I can promise you, he's absolutely into you. But my intuition says there was a lot more between us. Yes, I saw the gentle, empathetic, and vulnerable side of him, the broken man child who needs love but is scared of it at the same time. You're absolutely right. He's been hurt by love. That's why he chases validation and numbs himself with weed. Correct. He seems insecure, though on the surface, he looks secure and validation hungry, chasing dopamine through hookups. I guess I should have just been one of them. I no longer hope that things will change, though I believe he has depth and some self-awareness, but unfortunately, he shows no action for change. Weed is his escape. You bet it is. Am I delusional for thinking I impacted him? No! No! You absolutely impacted him. Gosh. Great question. And oh my God, I still occasionally have that thought of like, oh my God, did I mean anything to that person? Did I actually have an impact on them, or was it just me? Hell no. After reading all these letters and also seeing what I see with avoidance, I can promise you we absolutely have an impact on them. For these people to react this way shows we've actually, for their avoidant defenses to activate the way they have, they've absolutely been impacted by us. Um, was I delusional for thinking that he developed real feelings and got scared? No, that's very real. I feel like I was such a trigger for him. But why did he drag this out for 2 years? That's quite common. Because it's his fears playing up, and he also wanted to keep you in and limbo because being closer to you, having a proper relationship with you is too scary for him. What did he get from our situationship? Was it just an ego boost? Was it just the chase? No. It's not just the ego boost, it's protection. He likes the situationship because if it was real and more valid, it would overwhelm him. It's not because you've done anything wrong, it's because it's too scary for him. Is it possible he saw me as the one that got away? Probably. Was I someone that represented something too real, too confronting? Because once he told me how he admires my life. Yeah, well, this speaks to what I said in the beginning, which is I think he freaked out at how good you presented. And he just couldn't handle it because he probably felt like, well, if she rejects me, I'm finished, I'm fucked. Do you think that the girl waiting for him is his actual girlfriend? No, I think it's probably another girl like you who he's positioned in this way. And I don't think he feels good about himself because he mentioned how he feels guilty about his actions too. I once told him I wasn't going to wait for him to chase me, and he looked at me respectfully, though. I think he secretly likes to be chased. You bet he does, because it's a position of power and control. Could he be ashamed of his past, and that's why he didn't let me get close? Yes, that's definitely part of it. Was he afraid of judgment? Abso-fucking-lutely, yes. What do you think his erectile dysfunction was all about? Well, I kind of mentioned that earlier with the essay, the sexual assault stuff, but I actually think too, a lot of the time it's massive anxiety, performance anxiety, fear of, not being, you know, feeling like you're not going to do a good job sexually in bed. It can definitely be that. Could he emotionally detach because of this? Yes, but I think it's more disassociation. A lot of avoidant attachers will go numb and also go quite limp in bed because, they're so scared of, growing intimacy. They're trying to like manage their feelings as they're getting closer to you. But I do think a lot of this is interconnected. Do you think he's afraid of me abandoning him? Well, that was particularly pronounced when you looked at the other guy. So I think there's that. And I think it was also shown when he was hearing about your divorce situation. I think I think he wants you, but at the same time, he's scared to have you. So I think a lot of this was self-sabotage, fears of abandonment. And even though he knows you ended his marriage, he is not operating from a rational headspace. He's just freaking out. And I think he's freaking out because it's real and it's triggering a lot of irrational stuff in him. Also, am I untrustworthy because we met when I was still married? No, it's not that. You, ending your marriage at the time he met has got nothing to do with trustworthiness. It's his own fears and paranoia. Finally, what mental health issues do you think he has? I noticed he can't quite name them, so I suspect he doesn't know. Oh gosh, I'd be interested to hear what everyone else thinks about this when they hear this. Well, he's definitely got a fearful avoidant attachment style. I don't think he has a personality disorder. He definitely has a lot of arrested development, hence the Peter Pan syndrome. I think that he's obviously a weed addict, which we know. I can't say what else is there for sure. I don't feel there's any BPD-ness in this. If it is, it's extremely light. But no, I don't feel like there's anything much more to that based on this letter. I could be wrong. I think he's just very traumatized. I think he's had a lot of shit happen to him and he hasn't got over it. He's just got coping skills. Anyways, Tina concludes by saying that writing this letter, Ken, is my closure. Please be sincere in your response, including about me. I know I played a part in this mess. You may have played a part in this mess, Tina, but I feel like a lot of this is stuff that you didn't know about. And it's kind of like why I asked you, I wonder, Tina, if your last partner was actually a dismissive avoidant. I'm curious if he was, but anyways. Tina asks, I had appreciate advice on how to behave when I see him, although I suspect he may never approach me again. Okay, so if you were to see him again, I mean, if it were me, I'd probably just keep conversations very light and fluffy and surface level. Just be like, hey, nice to see you. I wish you well. Don't engage too much. If you feel like engaging, okay, sure. But he's just going to be the same person. Even if he, I think the thing you got to be aware of, and sorry for yawning, it's just been a long day. The thing you got to be aware of with bumping into someone like this after you've set those boundaries is these individuals can behave in very mixed ways. One of the ways is they act really cold and blank you and try and ignore you. Other times they will be acting like they're still in a relationship with you. And it's really speaks to how they're trying to manage their emotions internally. So in terms of how you would want to behave with him, I'd say keep your expectations low. Know this man is likely never going to change his ways unless he has a rock bottom. And yeah, this is just his own stuff. He's not ready to be in a relationship with you at all. You asked me what attachment style might he have? Absolutely fearful avoidance. How does his addiction affect his attachment style? It's connected. He's using that as a coping mechanism. People with an avoidant attachment seek intensity outside of their relationships. So that's their hobbies, their work, their addictions. I mean, they all relate. So it's to manage his emotional state. Will this progress in the later years? So one of two things will happen. One of three things. He will continue to be like this for the rest of his days. He will eventually hit a rock bottom, and one of two things will happen. He'll either work to change himself, or he'll go back to his old ways because his patterns are too strong. And I'd say the chances of recovery for someone like this are extremely low. That's my prognosis. Anyways, thank you very much, Ken. Now, I know for a fact that Tina has an update to this. So we're just going to quickly read this out now and see what the update is to the story. Oh, so we saw each other on the beach from afar. I was with my kids and I didn't pay much attention to him, though I noticed he was constantly looking at me. I'd already decided that I'm protecting my heart this time and held my boundaries. Good on you. I admit it's hard for me because I still have strong feelings for this guy. I don't want to kid myself, but I can see that he literally can't stop looking at me, sometimes directly and other times secretly. It's like he's the anxious one now and I'm the avoidant. I really hate this dynamic, but I just don't want him to think I'm chasing him or that he can do whatever he wants to me. You're not avoidantly attached. You're actually being very secure. The reason he's anxious is because his fear of abandonment's coming up now, and he's also pining for you. Fearful avoidant attachers, they don't like when there's too much distance between them at times, and it activates them, unless they're in their avoidancy, in which case they want all the space in the world. I'm really heartbroken. I mean, this guy opened up to me and he was the one who became vulnerable in his own way. And I told him I wasn't going to hurt him. So why do I feel like the bad guy now? Like I'm hurting him by staying away? Well, it probably feels like you're being the bad guy because he probably is hurting, but this is the consequence of his actions. Two, you're probably not used to maybe setting a boundary quite like this, and it feels maybe you feel guilty for doing this. But also, more importantly, it might speak to the fact that you've grown up where, it feels bad to, to feel like you're hurting someone like this. Because you probably look and when he's looking at you, you could probably see that he is hurting as a consequence of this. And it's probably because you've never really been maybe felt like you've actually got the opportunity to have maybe the capacity to have boundaries with other people like this before. When that happens, we often take a lot of responsibility for this and think we are the bad person. Anyways, I promised myself I wouldn't be the one to make the first move, but if he did, I would respond. Well, on the week I was there, he didn't do anything. He just kept staring. But correct me if I'm wrong, this has also been a consistent thing, right? You were the one who approached him first, so his proclivity is also to be shy from the sounds of it. And I think this speaks to how, he's very scared of rejection. We ran into each other for a few seconds. I said a shy hello, and he responded coldly. Well, I guess that was my prediction. It hurt even though I wasn't expecting more from him. Oh, yeah, that would hurt. And I'm sorry that you've gone through that. He's not handling his emotions well, and I can tell he's not responding well to this too. He keeps watching me, never really stepping forward, never really going away. Is this breadcrumbing? I suppose it's non-verbal breadcrumbing. Normally, breadcrumbing is where you get the, hey, how are you messages, and it's just like the vague little bits of connection to keep you engaged. I feel like he's struggling inside, and I keep trying to convince myself that the coldness isn't really about me. I hope he isn't shut down. Oh, he's shut down. And the coldness is unfortunately about you. It's not because you've done anything wrong. You've actually done something very good for yourself, but it's not going to feel good to your system. Clearly, from what I'm hearing, Tina, is that this is very hard for you to make this decision. And I'm really sorry that you're going through this because I know you're trying to protect your heart and yourself, but I can tell a part of you absolutely still wants to connect with this guy, which is very valid and understandable. I hope I'll have the opportunity to tell him how deeply he affected me, and I truly meant what I said, that I care for him deeply, but I also have to take care of myself. I just wish he knew that. Oh, can I just say, I really feel for you there. You sound like you have a lovely maternal part of you where you really want to be, taking care of him and holding that little part of him, that little child of his, and just being like, yeah, it's okay. I'm here for you. I can really tell you want to be there for him. But the thing is, what you're doing is actually, you are actually helping his growth and development by backing away like this. When avoidant attachers have to face the consequences of their actions, it actually gets them closer to that rock bottom they need to finally change their ways. So even though it may feel like we're doing something wrong, we're actually doing something very right because growth only happens through the friction. Yes, we like the epiphanies, we like the wows, but we need to sometimes go through pain, and rejection is part of that. I know it sounds foolish, but I'd felt like I had had a sense of relief, if at least he knew that I really cared about him. I think deep down he knows you do care about him, but the problem is he can't let that in without freaking out. I remember that he once said to me, I don't understand why a woman like you would want to be with a guy like me. Is this his shame talking? Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. Could he resent me for this? Is there anything I can do to repair what we had? Okay, Tina, I'm going to be gentle as I say this to you. I can tell that you distance yourself from him from self-protection, which is fantastic. But I can tell you have a side of you that absolutely wants to repair this because you don't feel good about what's happened. And that's something where I'd recommend chatting with a specialist or a professional about it because I can tell there's a part of you that absolutely wants to salvage this connection, even though it hurts you. And recovering from this is like recovering from an addiction. I want to be very clear with you. You've actually done a very boundaried thing. You've done a fabulous job of setting your boundaries with this, even though it doesn't feel good. Could he resent you for this? I mean, possibly, but then I also think if he was honest with himself, he'd look at himself and go, no, I did this to myself. He'd been stringing you along for 2 years because of his fears. I think this is all on him, and he would know that. Deep down, he would absolutely recognize this. Is there anything to repair? Like, is there any way to repair this? Unless he's in therapy? No. It'd be more of the same. Let me be clear. I'm not saying this because I'm trying to be cruel or I'm trying to be mean. It's just that you've already experienced how this goes. He's someone who can have these brief moments of intimacy before he freaks out and shuts down. And even if you were to get together, he's someone who will look for signs that you're going to leave him and break it off with you very quickly. He's someone who's highly sensitive to feedback and criticism, and he's obviously not someone who's ready for a real relationship. But I can understand that it's very hard for you because I can really hear a part of you that wants to still be with him. And it's fine. A lot of us still want that. So I get it. Anyways, Tina, Thank you so much for sharing this. What an episode. It's our 100th. And yes, I'm nearing the end of my batch of letters, which is wonderful because I can then reopen the Ken Reads again for anyone who wants a letter reading. But yeah, thank you very much for sending this letter through, Tina. This was such a good opportunity to share your story, which is very familiar and very painful.